Yahoo Fantasy Auto Racing Week 19 in the Tucson Racing Group. Week 19 action this week took place at the Chicagoland Speedway, the 1.5-mile track about 50 miles outside of Chicago, Illinois. The Saturday night race under the lights was won by David Rudiman. Kind of a surprise here. Rudiman, his second career victory and his first victory running the entire distance. Last season, Rudiman was the winner of the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte, but the race was actually shortened by rain on a Monday. So for Rudiman, his first full-length race victory, definitely a win this team needed, as this team is definitely still in the fight for the top 12 in points with some races left to go. Rounding out the top 5 was Carl Edwards, who had a big second-place finish this week. Then Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer, and Jamie McMurray. All drivers who needed really good runs. Some unusual names in the top 10 this week, and some unusual names outside the top 20. We'll get into that in just a bit. In the overall point standings, Kevin Harvick maintains a 103-point lead over Jeff Gordon, and sitting third in the overall points, Jimmy Johnson, 188 points back. Some of the race notes: Jamie McMurray started on pole for the event. Jimmy Johnson actually started alongside him on row 1 and led the first lap, as well as about 90 laps from that point. Johnson absolutely dominating the first quarter of the race, but trouble would find Johnson's way. Starting with green flag pit stops. Under green flag conditions, Johnson actually missed pit road. He overshot the pit entrance. He had to drive back around. He lost a lot of time on the racetrack. He then completed his stop and actually started making up some ground on the track. Then a caution came out under caution pit stops. He came out not quite first, so he was a little bit back, and in the first turn of the first lap of the restart, Johnson actually spun out, went through the grass on the back stretch. Didn't really do any damage to his car, but it cost him at least 20 positions on the racetrack, about 20-25 spots on the racetrack. Johnson was starting to work his way back through traffic. Again, we're around the halfway point of the race. Johnson's working his way back through traffic, trying to get his obviously dominant race car back towards the front, and tire wear became an issue for Johnson, an issue that really wasn't found on any other race cars. Johnson had some tire trouble, wound up putting it in the wall, and would run laps down for most of the rest of the event, and wound up coming home in 25th. So for Johnson, definitely one that got away this past Saturday night. Some of the other notes: Ryan Newman, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick. Where were they? They were in the back. They were in the back almost the entire race. These guys missed the setup dramatically. A lot of these drivers wound up laps down throughout the event. Kurt Busch actually finished 2 laps down, if I remember correctly. So those guys all missed setups. Kevin Harvick wound up not just missing the setup, but also having engine woes. So the points leader struggled, and a good chunk of his points lead was dwindled down after this event. Greg Biffle was another driver who wound up finishing in the back. He actually had a really good car, but the engine went south on him, so he wound up finishing in the back as well. The race was pretty much dominated by long green flag runs. Lots of time for the dominant race cars to surface to the top, and not a lot of opportunities for cars running in the back to make adjustments to try to get back towards the front. So the best cars were running up front at the end of the race, which is always good to see. David Rudiman absolutely had one of the best cars on the track the entire event, so Rudiman, a well-deserved and much-earned victory for that team. In the Tucson Racing Group, the winner this week, The Wall Always Wins, picks up the fourth win of the season for that team with 276 points. Actually kind of a low score by winning standards, but everybody seemed to struggle with the lineups this week. The Wall made the most of the opportunity and did quite well, picking 2 of the top 10, with Clint Boyer in 4th and Paul Menard in 10th out of Group C. And then Group A driver Mark Martin was 15th this week. He kind of had a disappointing run, being that he was the defending champion of the race, but 15th helped out. The Wall Always Wins in picking up the victory. And then Ryan Newman salvaged a 22nd place finish for that team. 22 points out of first this week, and continuing a surge in the standings, Greek Thunder finished second this week with 254 points. Greek had 2 of the top 10 with Jeff Burton in 7th and Paul Menard in 10th. Had Kyle Busch in Group A for 17th and Earnhardt Jr. in Group B for 23rd. Jr. also not much of a competitor this week. Third place this week, Team Edwards, the driver, 38 points out of first. Had Kurt Busch in Group A. Kurt, as we mentioned, 2 laps down, wound up 26th by race's end. But Edwards countered that with Casey Kane having a very quiet 6th place finish this week. A.J. Allmendinger in Group C with a 14th, and Joey Logano with a 19th. So 3 drivers in the top 20 to put Team Edwards third. Fourth this week, Lightning McQueen with 237 points, just 1 point out of third. Had Tony Stewart in Group A for 9th. Was the only driver in the top 10, though. Martin Truex was 11th, so another good run from him. But the rest of the team, Earnhardt Jr. in 23rd and Sam Hornish Jr. in 24th. Fifth this week, High, Wide, and Handsome picks up yet another top 5. Not a very good run, though, for this team. 224 points total, 52 out of first. Had Kurt Busch in Group A for 26th. That's not going to get the job done. Casey Kane was the best driver on this team in Group B with a 6th. Matt Kenseth had a very quiet 13th place night. And Reed Sorensen wound up 27th in the Red Bull 83 car. That team was almost non-existent almost all the evening. 6th this week was Hulk Smash with a very disappointing 181-point effort, 95 points out of first. Had the best driver on this team, Earnhardt Jr., Dale Earnhardt Jr., 23rd. This team actually started 23rd, Earnhardt Jr., 24th, Sam Hornish, and 25th, Jimmy Johnson, and then Kevin Harvick in 34th. So this team had a terrible lineup this week. 7th this week with just 2 drivers starting. Whoa, a left turn, 110 points. 7th out of Jeff Burton and 30th out of Scott Speed. 8th this week, oh no, a blowout with just 3 points. Had no eligible drivers come race time, but had Tony Stewart in qualifying for 3 points. And 9th was Kane Rules, yet again scoring 0. In the overall standings, High, Wide, and Handsome, 5,186 points now. Just 121 on Lightning McQueen, who's putting a little bit of distance between himself and third place Hulk Smash, who's 213 points out in third. Then we've got a little bit of a battle heating up here between 4th and 5th. The Wall always wins, 406 points out, and at Team Edwards, the driver, 506 points out, just 100 points separating 4th and 5th. And then you're not too far back to Greek Thunder, who's really climbed out of a hole here, just 573 points out of first, but less than 70 points behind Team Edwards for 5th. So a lot of action there heating up in the 4 through 6 sections. Then Whoa, a left turn, finally surpasses Oh no, a blowout in the standings. Both those teams are 1,200 points or more back. And rounding out the field, Kane Rules, who's almost 3,000 points out of first. Next week, they're going to be off, so no race next weekend. But in 2 weeks, you're going to have round 20 of the 2010 season, the Brickyard 400 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Your pool's going to lock Saturday at 2 a.m. Usually it's Friday at 2 a.m. Saturday, July 24th at 2 a.m. Your picks will need to be in for the pool. And the actual starters are going to lock Sunday, July 25th at approximately 10:14 a.m. So I hope to see you back in 2 weeks. Count it 2 weeks for week 20 in the Tucson Racing Group.